Though Castlevania games tend to be light on story and heavy on action, there's still quite a tale underpinning the adventures of the Belmont clan. Drawing a lot of inspiration from Bram Stoker's Dracula, as well as the classic Universal monster movies of the 1930s and 40s, like The Mummy and Frankenstein, the Castlevania series bases itself on 1 part history and 3 parts fiction to create an interesting timeline that spans from the High Middle Ages right up until the Age of Enlightenment. The newer Lords of Shadow timeline goes even further, reaching the end of days. But for the origins of Simon and other Belmonts, we're only looking at the original Vania timeline. With both Simon and Richter being announced as playable characters in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate for the Nintendo Switch, there's no better time to take a trip down memory lane and relive the history of the Castlevania series in preparation for laying serious beatdowns on some of the cutesy, fuzzy Smash characters with the badass vampire hunters and their legendary whip. Before we begin, we publish new content all week long, so be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. Though gamers were first introduced to Simon in 1986's Castlevania, the history of the Belmonts spans back a good 600 years before that, with his ancestor Leon and the events of Lament of Innocence. The Belmont Saga picks up in 1094 AD, a time of lords, knights, alchemists, and wizards. 2 of the fiercest knights of the time were Leon Belmont and his good friend Matthias Kronqvist, and they soon find themselves involved in a plot to rescue Leon's fiancée, Sarah, from a powerful lord named Walter Bernard, who just turns out to be a vampire. Leon somehow manages to rescue his fiancée despite being greatly outmatched by Lord Bernard, but once he has her to safety, he learns she's slowly turning into a vampire.
That girl has been tainted by the vampire.
You're lying! That can't be!
An alchemist offers to infuse her soul with Leon's whip to create a weapon that could rival the powers of the undead, and Leon reluctantly agrees, giving birth to the legendary vampire killer whip. Leon defeats Walter Bernard, but learns that the whole kidnapping was plotted by his friend Matthias, who also just so happens to be a vampire. Betrayed and angry, Leon vows to hunt his former friend until the end of time if necessary, igniting the long-running generational battle between Belmonts and vampires that continued uninterrupted throughout the 12th, 13th, and 14th centuries.
I have the power to destroy all related to the vampires. Though you have divine powers, you are no exception.
The next Belmont we meet goes by the name of Trevor, and his tale picks up in the late 15th century, where the immortal vampire, now known as Dracula, is once again on the loose, leading to the events of Dracula's curse. With the countryside devastated by the Count's actions and unable to combat his strength, the church has no option left but to hire another Belmont to hunt down Dracula and end his reign of terror for good. Trevor hunts the Count to his castle, where he encounters Dracula's son, Alucard, who is also there to end his father's genocide against humanity. The two join forces and vanquish Dracula once more. The Count's presence still hangs over the countryside, bringing illness and violence with it for the next 100 years before he's fully reborn in the year 1576 AD. This time, it's Christopher Belmont, Trevor's direct descendant, and over the next 15 years, he finally manages to do so while keeping his son Soliu safe from Dracula's evil clutches during the events of Castlevania The Adventure and Castlevania Belmont's Revenge for the Game Boy. All is well in the world for exactly 100 years before Dracula is once again reborn and we meet one of the more famous Belmonts, Simon. His quest against the Count's dark forces plays out very similar to his forebearers in Trevor and Christopher, but with a slight twist. Having managed to defeat Dracula after assaulting his castle and laying waste to an untold number of undead monsters in the original Castlevania, Simon is struck down with a curse from the Count, causing his body and mind to slowly decay over time. Roughly 7 years later, in 1698 AD and the events of Simon's quest, a mysterious woman claims that Dracula will be reborn when the curse finally manages to kill Simon. So the famed vampire hunter has no choice but to heed her warning and sets off to collect the body parts of Dracula he scattered over the countryside after defeating him initially with the intention of burning them and ridding the world of evil for good. Along his journey, however, The ghost of Dracula emerges from one of the body parts, and the weakened Simon is just barely able to defeat the spectral incarnation of the Count to prevent his reappearance. With Dracula fully defeated, Simon is freed from his curse and restores hope and harmony to Transylvania once more. But history suggests that the battle is far from over. Simon would continue to wield the vampire killer before passing the legendary whip to his grandson, Just Belmont, who continues the family's legacy of hunting vampires 50 years after Simon's quest in the year 1748 AD. Just continues his grandfather's mission of destroying all Dracula's body parts, and although he never comes face to face with the Count, Just does battle with evil spirits attempting to revive Dracula and set the world to darkness. Like the long lineage of vampire hunters before him, Just tirelessly works to keep the countryside safe from all types of evil, not just Dracula. True to the legend yet again, Dracula fully appears 100 years after being defeated by Simon in 1691 AD. The Count is revived by a dark priest named Shaft in 1792, and once again, the Belmonts are called on to eradicate evil, but this time it falls on the shoulders of Richter Belmont, a direct descendant of both Simon and Just. Richter manages to overthrow Dracula in Rondo of Blood, but like Simon, he's left badly cursed, as the dark priest Shaft's spell transfers from the defeated Dracula to the youngest Belmont, leaving him battling for his life. As the curse worsens, Shaft gains more and more power of Richter, until 5 years later, during the events of Symphony of the Night, he gains full control over the vampire hunter and plans to revive Dracula by using Richter as his puppet. With Richter unable to battle the forces of evil, Dracula's castle is able to appear once more, making way for the eventual rebirth of the Count himself.
What is a man? A miserable little pile of secrets!
But, sensing a rise in evil, the long-slumbering Alucard awakens from his sleep to once again stop his father from gaining power, and the son of Dracula also manages to free Richter from his spell, leaving Transylvania free and clear of evil once again.
Alucard, I'm glad you're all right.
I'm sorry. 'Tis my fault you had to fight your own father.
Richter disappears shortly after the events of Symphony of the Night, and the legendary whip would pass over to the Schneider clan in the 19th century, then into the Morris clan in the early 20th century. It wasn't until 1999 that the whip finally returned to the Belmont family with its current wielder, Julius Belmont, whom had also defeated Dracula yet again that same year, this time sealing Dracula's castle for good inside of a solar eclipse. With both Simon and Richter being playable characters in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, we sure hope that we've not heard the last from the whip-cracking, vampire-smacking family of heroes, and, as always, we're hoping for another Castlevania game down the line.
Be gone! You don't belong in this world, monster!
Check out these other great clips from MojoPlays, and be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to get notified about our latest video.